thank you everyone for coming. It's my job to welcome you. I'm Jenny Edwards. I direct CEE's Innovation Exchange, and we've got a great night for you tonight. It's been fantastic to see the enthusiasm around these issues, and we're just so glad that you're joining us. So thank you. So CEE, as part of our 35th anniversary, we've been taking the opportunity to look back on the past 35 years, the achievements that we've had, but also take that as an opportunity to look forward another 35 years, taking us to 2050, and asking sort of what some of the biggest challenges are that we have here in our state and the progress that we want to make. So that's part of why we're here tonight. This is the third and final of 3 forums that we've put on this topic. And again, we've got a great lineup of speakers that I'm very excited that I'll introduce you to. I want to make sure to thank our sponsor, McKnight Foundation, because without them, this night wouldn't be possible. So thank you very much. So as part of the reflecting that we've been doing, especially in the energy policy world, CEE's been working on energy policy for a number of years. Efficiency, of course, one of the things we're known for, but also just state integrated resource planning, some renewables work that we've done, and the state has made tremendous progress. I mean, Minnesota is really a national leader on these issues, and thanks in large part to the folks that you'll hear from tonight and the folks in this room. And one of the things that we've reflected on is the fact that part of the reason we can do great work in this state is the fact that we are pragmatic in our solutions, but also sort of pioneering in our vision. And I think those two things really come together to make this a unique place to work, and you'll hear that throughout the night. So we've got some great folks, as I mentioned. We're really excited by everyone who's agreed to come participate tonight. These are really leaders in the field, and they're folks who are going to be leading us into the next 35 years. I know you're not really here to listen to me, so I'll move on so that you can listen to them. But I do want to say a few things. First off, thanks to CEE staff who put this on. We've had a great turnout. Lots of you are really interested in this, so thank you, and our staff has accommodated that. I want to just mention a few people: Ashley, Helen, Megan, Emma, Judy, Dave up in the booth. So thanks to you guys all for putting this on. I want to do a couple housekeeping things. If your phone's not on vibrate, put it on vibrate now. This is your warning. We actually are recording tonight, so the video will be available on CEE's website. We're also tweeting. So if you're on Twitter and want to follow along, we have a hashtag, CEE Forum. I think that's on your program, so go ahead and use that. And I also want to say that at the end of the night, we'll be having a chance for questions. So think of things that come to your mind. We'll have an opportunity for you to write down some questions and ask our panelists. I'm going to bring to the stage Sheldon Strom. Sheldon is my boss and the president and founder of CEE, so he's been there for all of those long 35 years. Sheldon's a great force in energy and energy efficiency in the state. I know a lot of you know him and have worked with him. He's going to say hello and introduce our keynote.
Well, thanks, Jenny. Jenny says nice things about me in public and private. She holds me accountable for some of the things I don't do quite as effectively as I should. So as Jenny mentioned, this is our 35th year where we've had these forums, and this is the last of these forums. And over these last 35 years, Minnesota, the utility industry and advocates and regulators have really accomplished a lot. Minnesota is really among the national leaders in renewables, energy efficiency, and carbon reduction. And unlike most states, we've done that at low cost. So that's one of the things that's different about the way Minnesota's done things. But tonight, we want to stop looking back and start looking forward. Well, in 35 years, we face 2050. 2050, we probably will have to essentially eliminate our use of fossil fuels. At the same time, we're probably going to be even more dependent on electricity. So the internet revolution, the digital revolution will probably accelerate. We will probably electrify our transportation system. We'll probably substitute electricity for lots of existing fossil fuel uses. So that's going to present a lot of challenges for the electric industry, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. It's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. That's Ben Fowke, Chairman, President, and CEO of Xcel Energy. Ben's been at the helm of Xcel Energy since August of 2011. Before taking that position, he had a number of jobs at the company, including President and Chief Operating Officer, Vice President, and Chief Financial Officer. He has a broad range of experience in the industry, which is going to come in really handy because going forward, the industry is going to be very complex. There'll be lots of threats and hopefully some opportunities. I think Ben is well positioned to address those things. Ben says he loves to talk energy, especially to a group like this, a group of really knowledgeable people who know the issues and want to work together to make things better. So I'm very much looking forward to what Ben has to say. I'm sure you are, so I'd like to welcome Ben Fowke.
Well, Sheldon, I like to think I have some experience in the energy industry, but not 35 years. So congratulations, and thanks for pretty much giving my speech today. Great job, and really, Xcel Energy really wants to also share in the accolades. You've been a great partner, and you've done tremendous work within the community. And you're right, I really do like talking about energy. It's an extremely important topic. I think we've got a lot of engaged people here, so I'm looking forward to it. And let me just tee it up for you now. We're going to talk about trends that are happening in the industry, what those trends mean for the industry, Xcel Energy specifically, where we want those trends to go, how we're going to get there, and how we build on the great momentum I think we've already established. And with that, before we talk about the future, I'd like to talk a little bit about our accomplishments. And we did this together. Now, sometimes we needed a little push. Some in this room might say we needed a little shove. Sometimes we had to shove back a little bit. But you know what? At the end of the day, we've accomplished a lot already. Not the least of which is #1 wind provider in the United States, have been for a decade now. And Sheldon, you're right, we've done it at a great price point. You know, we're going to talk about carbon reduction, but we have already, since 2005, reduced our carbon emissions by over 20% in the upper Midwest here at Xcel Energy, and we're on track to reduce them by 30% by 2020. And again, great price point. So I'm really proud of that, and we're going to do more. We have been a leader in conservation with the incentives that our PUC and the department have recommended. We have been able to save over the last decade and a half about 8 medium-sized power plants through our conservation efforts. And I think, as everybody in this room knows, it's early days for solar, but I am confident that we are going to be able to meet the legislative mandate of 1.5% of our energy through solar by 2020. We're well on our way there, and again, I think we need to be careful we do it right, but we're going to get there, and I'm proud about that and excited about that. You may not know this. We have built more of the backbone of transmission, the 345 kV lines in this country, than any other utility, and not the least of which has been the CapEx 2020 project right here in the upper Midwest. Of course, you know, for me, you can never lose sight of reliability, and I'm proud to tell you we have some of the best reliability in the United States, and we do have the best storm response in the United States, and that's when we matter the most, and we're there for you. And finally, as I said a couple times already, we've done all these accomplishments together and have done it at a competitive price. Our prices are still at or below the median of the United States. So we've done all this and done it at a great price. So let's talk about what's happening in the industry. We've got changing economics, growing customer expectations, and very much a changing policy landscape. I'll start with some of the economics, and starting with what's happening with natural gas. Everybody in this room knows about horizontal drilling and fracking, but step back and just go back a few years to 2008. Gas prices then were at $12 an MMBTU. Okay, today they're around $3. Put that in perspective. For every dollar change in natural gas over a 10-year period, that saves or costs our customers $1.2 billion. So that decline from $12 to $3 has been extremely helpful for us as we've made significant investments in infrastructure. It's basically mitigated that for our customers. It's also allowed us to move from coal to gas. It's allowed the whole industry in the United States to move from coal to gas. In fact, back in 2008, about 48% of our nation's energy came through coal. Today, it's 38%. Back in 2008, it was 21% from natural gas. Today, it's 27%. Now, that's a good thing, but when, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. And the thing I worry about is, as the nation moves increasingly to natural gas, do we have the infrastructure, the reliability that goes with that? Do we have all our eggs in one basket? Well, I can tell you at Xcel Energy, that's not what we're doing. And that segues into renewables. You look at renewables, and these are the various price points you see on the screen at different times. And we have found that wind basically follows the price of natural gas. So on your screen here, you see the red line and a blue bar. The blue bar are federal tax credits, production tax credits. As at the federal level, our customers don't have to pay that tax, obviously. Now, what we've been able to do is bring in natural gas at wind at prices below what we could have hedged natural gas out. So when I think of wind, I think of it as a fuel alternative to natural gas. Everything else it does for us is just icing on the cake, the environmental benefits, et cetera. So this slide to me is very powerful. We can bring wind in at cheaper than we could fire up a gas plant with natural gas. The other thing that's changing very, very quickly is solar. Look at the price of solar just a few years ago, and look where it is today. Actually, that's 2013. If we went to 2014, it'd be even lower. Solar is now approaching parity with fossil alternatives, combined cycle plants. And I think that's amazing. I would have never thought 5 years ago that I'd be saying that today, but it's a fact and it's true. A couple caveats. The first is, as we get more and more renewables and solar on the system, there are integration costs that start to rise, and you start to incur some additional cost. The second thing that I'd point out to you is that when I talk about parity with combined cycle gas plants, I'm talking about utility scale solar. When we get to some smaller solar technologies, rooftop solar, it requires an additional subsidy, that's the green bar you see there, to make it affordable for the end consumer. Those subsidies can be somewhat controversial in our industry. They involve things like net metering and things like that. So it's not without its controversy, but again, the fact is that solar is coming down enormously in price, and we're happy to put it on our system. Other technologies we're looking at, combined heat and power, more of an industrial type application, but in many cases it's in the money. We're looking at microgrids. Microgrids today are still expensive, but we want to study it. Microgrids, I think, offer the opportunity to have increased reliability. Battery storage, everybody's heard about Tesla and their plans with batteries. They've got great plans to bring the cost of batteries down. I've seen those studies. I've talked to some of the Tesla folks. It'll be a while, given that we're pretty low cost, that batteries are economically justifiable in our system, but those days are coming. Fuel cells are further out. And I don't know how many of you might have heard of the utility in the box concept. I think that's a long way out. That's where you literally, as a consumer, disconnect from the grid and have your own generation via renewables and gas-fired generation. It's all on the horizon. The other thing that's changing economically is the investor appetite. Interest rates, all-time historic lows. They have been for a decade. This slide, if I refresh it today, we all know 10-year interest rates are well below 2%. It's done a lot of things for us. As we've invested in infrastructure, these low interest rates have helped make that infrastructure more affordable for our customers. That's a great thing. But it's also changing investor appetites. Investors are hungry for yield. They're looking for opportunities to invest money. And if you combine that with some public policy decisions, some tax innovations, I suppose you could say, and you're starting to see alternative ways to finance what was a very traditionally financed business. We first saw it with something called a Transco, a separate transmission company regulated by Fowke that investors really appreciate. They like the transparency of it. We've all heard of master limited partnerships and REITs. These are tax-advantaged, yield-type oriented investments. You really never really saw those in the utility world. You're seeing it today. And then finally, there's a new vehicle called a yieldco. And a yieldco is kind of a hybrid master limited partnership without some of the restrictions. Well, I say that because many of my peer companies are starting to look at those alternative transactions to invest in capital. They're getting a good deal from investors, and they're going forward with it. The other thing that's really changed is sales. A few years ago, if you told me what the GDP of the state or the nation was going to be, I would tell you what our electric sales growth was going to be. It was fairly predictable. Then, of course, came the Great Recession, where we actually saw sales fall. But I think within that time frame, we also saw technological improvements that are really going to be with us for a sustained period. Today, things like air conditioners, you couldn't buy even a modestly efficient air conditioner today 10 years ago with the same efficiency. TVs, the flat screen TVs we love so much, they're 70% more efficient today when they're on than they were 10 years ago, 90% more efficient when they're off. You know, I can pull out my phone here. I'm sure everybody has one of these. This uses about $1 to $2 of electricity in a year. Our old PCs 10 years ago used about $50 of electricity. So we're seeing an enormous change in efficiency of appliances, and what that means going forward is sales are not going to rebound and be so predictable anymore. They're going to be flatter. At the same time, the need to invest in our infrastructure has never been more pronounced. So what does that mean? Well, that means, as you might have guessed, we're filing a lot of rate cases. So that's an extremely important changing economic factor for us. Of course, customers have a lot of expectations, and not seeing rate increases are one of them, but there's many other things now. They increasingly want more options, more control, greener options, more convenience, and they want more channels to communicate with their utility. And frankly, if we don't give it to them, they're starting to look beyond the traditional utility. You know, for a regulated utility, I like to say we have a lot of competition. And we've always had it in things like how we acquire our power plants. It's always been a competitively bid process. We have to demonstrate we can be just as efficient as outsiders. Recently, with FERC 1000, Rule 1000 under FERC, transmission is becoming competitively bid. Even more important to me, we're starting to see competition for the end user, the retail customer, whether it's residential or commercial, with things like distributed generation. So a lot of competition right at our doorstep. The one thing that I'm really comfortable that nobody can compete with, and that's the value of the grid. To replicate the grid today would cost an average consumer 10 to 15 times more than what we're asking them to pay for today. So the grid really is deeply in the money, and it really is the economic enabler. Nothing is going to work without the grid to support it. So to me, that just demonstrates how important the grid is. We need to invest in it. And bottom line is, we also need to make it secure. And a lot's changed in the last 10 years. We all see the headlines constantly about physical and cyber attacks. Well, I can tell you they're real, it's sobering. And as CEO of an electric and gas utility, I'm spending a lot of time with agencies that have eagles in their emblems. And I never thought I would be doing that. Needing to get secret clearance to hear the briefings. And it's important. We have a lot to protect. I mean, just look at the miles of transmission lines, the number of substations, transformers, power plants. Well, I can tell you we can't protect every mile and every substation, but what we do protect are the critical infrastructure that we must have to survive as a society. And it's just that important. So how are we doing it? Well, we take a multi-approach to protection. It starts with defense in depth, multiple layers of defense mechanisms, making sure that some of our key systems don't even touch the internet and other things. We invest in resiliency. We've always done that. But in the past, we did it with things like tornadoes in mind. Now we have to think about other more man-made type threats. We've always drilled. Today, we're drilling nationally. There's been 2 national exercises, Grid X1 and Grid X2, and actually the president joined us in one of those exercises. So we know that we need to have a strong response plan because the best defenses still can be pierced ultimately. And the final thing here is where you see risk-based planning. I think that's very important too. As we look at technologies, we also have to think about the risks those technologies can bring to a system. There's something about having some analog capabilities in today's world with something as important as energy. Has everybody heard about these carbon rules that the EPA is talking about? I know I have, and these are proposed rules, of course. They're not finalized yet. But just look at the carbon intensity reductions that we're being asked to do in the 5 states in the upper Midwest, all but Iowa we serve, by the way. Look at the disparity between the states, and then think about different energy policies from those states. That alone is a daunting task. Now, it's not like we at Xcel Energy haven't been thinking about carbon reduction. We have. You know, I mentioned to you that we're on our way to reduce carbon by 30%. We've done a lot of great things. Again, working together, the MERP project. Does everybody remember MERP and how we retired coal plants and replaced them with natural gas? Well, that happened between 2005 and 2012. Unfortunately, the EPA standard is using 2012 as the baseline year. So that means potentially, if we can't get credit for that, then everything we did from 2005 and 2012, we can't somehow use and monetize so that we can help buy down the cost of doing more in Minnesota. So it is disappointing to me, and I hope that we can change that with the final rules. Well, I've talked to you a lot about some of the changes. I could talk to you probably for hours about changes that are happening in the industry. But how do we react to that? Well, I think we've got a solid vision. We want to remain the trusted preferred provider of our customers' energy needs, and we do that by fulfilling our mission every day, providing clean, safe energy at a competitive price. So what do we do with that? How do we achieve the vision? We're going to talk more about it, but it starts with continuing to reduce carbon and reducing carbon in the most efficient way possible. We have to put money into our grid. The grid is the economic enabler. It needs to be safe, it needs to be reliable, it needs to be secure. Increasingly, we have to be open to innovative products that others may have, and we have to be able to innovate ourselves. And all this, I think, requires an evolution of the regulatory compact. Started working on that late last year with our resource plan filing here in Minnesota. I'm delighted to tell you that we believe by 2030 we can double the amount of renewables in our system to 35%. Does that sound good to everybody? 35%? We also can reduce our coal output. Together with the renewable increase, we can be at 40% carbon reduction by 2030. We can do that and not do the dash to gas. Still have that fuel diversity, still have the options, still have the ability to see what's happening with policy and commodity prices, et cetera, and make choices as a result of that. So we'll have fuel diversity, and we'll be 63% carbon-free by 2030. But the best news of that is we can do this at a reasonable cost. In that filing, we said that we could do all of this at a cost that is probably over the 15-year period not going to be any more than 3% more expensive than going with more traditional resources. It requires us to stay disciplined on efficiency, be focused on what I think the policy objective is, which is carbon reduction. To do? Well, I think we want to have longer-term plans that keep us out of having to file routine rate cases. What does that do for everyone? Well, for customers, they get the price certainty. They know what's coming. Same with our investors, same with us. We know what the rules are, and we work within it. Within that framework, we need to be open to new tools. Incentives do work. Additionally, we need to look at tools to mitigate the pace of rate increases when we have some spikes as infrastructure gets put into service. We need to be open to some of those alternatives that I talked about. If we can lower the cost of capital and make it more affordable for our customers, I'm open to it. And then finally, we need to move away from a one-size-fits-all rate design. Now that sounds pretty easy to say. I can tell you it's extremely hard to do. We need to work very closely and hand in glove with the department and the whole regulatory teams, because this is where the rubber meets the road. You have to make sure that new products are fair to all customers. You can't have one customer paying for another customer's choice. But we need to do it. So what will we have? We'll have a flexible, collaborative, forward-looking process. We do this, we move forward. We're not waiting for those final EPA rules. We're not seeing what happens to gas prices. We're moving forward with what I would call a no-regrets policy. Let's get started. Let's do things that give us a lot of optionality as rules and prices change, but let's get started today. And that's what we want to do. That's what you just saw. Let's look at technology. Let's review it, but let's implement it at the speed of value, making sure, again, that we're as efficient as possible. Let's be open to tools to mitigate the incentives we might need, and let's take a policy-based, comprehensive view, the long view, and make sure that that's how we're also regulating utilities like Xcel Energy. I think we've got a bright future at Xcel. It's our job to enable this transformation. It's our job to balance multiple interests, and that's at the customer level. It's also at the state level. We are a better company at serving all of those states that I mentioned. It saves everybody money, but we have to be respectful that different states have different energy policy objectives. We have to figure out a way to bridge that gap. Talked a little bit about it. Our system is definitely going to be less carbon intensive going forward. We are going to have far more renewables. The price of renewables keeps coming down. I'm excited about it. Coal is going to go away. It's just a matter of time, and you're going to see that in the plan that we start to wean off coal. And I would say that what we want to do, well, okay, clap for that. But I will also tell you that I think we have to make a commitment to nuclear. Nuclear is obviously a carbon-free resource. We don't want to lose that until other technologies are there to replace it. If you shut down nuclear plants, it has a very negative impact on our carbon emissions. So we need to be mindful of that. At the same time, we need to encourage in a very efficient way these distributed resources that I talked about. You need a grid to enable it. That's our system in the future. We do all that, and we keep our prices competitive. We give our customers choice. Hopefully, they'll remain our customers, and hopefully, they'll be satisfied. And we'll have a regulatory framework that's policy-based, fair, efficient, gives incentives for the proper behaviors, and is collaborative. Now, speaking of collaborative, I'm sure some of you might have noticed I don't have a Minnesota accent. I'm actually from the East Coast, from Maryland. I've been here for 12 years. Sarah tells me that I need to be here another 13 years before I can be a Minnesotan. I hope to have that happen. But one thing that's really impressed me in Minnesota, you've heard it before, but as an outsider coming in, I can tell you it's true. This state collaborates. There's problems, people get together, and they solve it. We've done a lot already. We've got a great team. You in this room are part of that team. Let's keep working together. We can make this work, and we can make it work in a way that benefits everybody. So that's my pitch. That's our future. That's how we're going to respond to the challenges of today. Thank you.